Hi, I'm Brian Hanley, Bullish Studio CEO, and welcome back to another episode of the Bullish Studio Podcast. Today I'm joined by Paul and Petra, co-founders of R3 Printing. R3 is building a 3D printer. What was interesting about them is that they're leveraging cutting-edge equity crowdfunding, where anybody can invest in their company via StartEngine. Please enjoy my conversation with Paul and Petra, and make sure that you're subscribed to Bullish Studio on YouTube and that you follow us along on Apple and Spotify or wherever else you get your podcasts. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Yeah, thank you guys very much. So I guess if you want to just kick off by introducing both of yourselves and the company.
I'm Paul. This is Petra. We're the co-founders of R3 Printing. At R3, we tell people that we're building the 3D printing future. We're trying to automate 3D printing to the point that it can become a viable means of mass production. 3D printing is an incredibly powerful tool. It's already being used in kind of higher end industries like aerospace and automotive because of all the benefits it can provide with strength to weight, which is important, let's say, if you're building an airplane. But there's tons of applications that can apply to people's everyday lives, but that price point is just the barrier that hasn't been smashed yet. And with the platform that we're building, starting with R3 Printer and additional products that we're releasing, over the course of time, we have a pretty robust timeline of that, is the way that we're going to be able to do that, to empower manufacturers to scale up their operations and achieve, the level of mass production using 3D printing that we now enjoy today.
Could you talk just more specifically, I guess, about your kind of what inspired you to start this business?
Petra and I have pretty complementary skills that kind of have meshed together and, allowed us to achieve the success we've achieved with, building and growing R3. I'm the son of two Polish immigrants that escaped communist Poland and, came to New York City in the 80s. So that's where I get a lot of my grit and passion from. I have a STEM background that out of college I first applied to automating business processes and kind of taking away the inefficient tasks that were holding back the companies that I was working for. And I saw the same opportunity in 3D printing to do that in order to unlock scale and lower the price point of 3D printing. Petra and I teamed up and we were able to put our skills together to help build R3.
Yeah. I come from a very entrepreneurial family as well. Both sets of grandparents ran their own businesses. My dad is an entrepreneur. He creates and teaches organizational behavior and leadership at business schools. So I feel like I grew up around a lot of entrepreneurial people, and that kind of made me have that mindset starting out. So I've traveled a lot. I lived in 5 different countries. I've always been a boundary pusher. I ended up in New York. I actually went to NYU. And then in terms of career, I spent a lot of time in media and marketing. So I learned a lot from companies like ABC News, Amnet Group, which is part of Dentsu. And I feel like that's where I really got the work ethic that, so many New Yorkers have. New York is definitely a good place to hone those skills and get that work ethic down. I feel like that's really helped me here at R3.
What was the first thing that you guys 3D printed?
Ooh, I don't know. That has a long history because prior to the R3 that we know today, we were running a 3D printing service. So that's how, we know our customers so well. We know exactly how to build the machine that these customers want because we once were one. We're building something that would have served us back in the day. I would say it was some sort of prototype, like light apparatus. It was something for film or media related that had some sort of lighting application. That's all I can really recall or go into. It was a very unique part. It literally could only be 3D printed, and I remember it was a rush job. So this was back on the East Coast. And part of our value proposition was we can get this to you as soon as it's done printing. And that was a really fun experience.
So let's go back to R3. So you guys are developing a printer and it sounds like other services and products. So can you talk a little bit about what you've built so far, what the product is, who it's for, and then, what the other kind of components to it?
Yeah, so we're starting with the 3D printer. That's the cornerstone building block of the whole product ecosystem. So a fully next-gen design of 3D printer can print all the thermoplastics that are currently known to man. It can also print metal in the same machine. So the vision behind this is the last 3D printer that you're going to have to buy as a manufacturer. And then further products that we have down the pipeline are kind of add-ons to that. So either enhancements to the machine itself, with being able to handle multiple, material feeds at the same time without human intervention, right? The goal is automation, or post-processing. A lot of 3D printing requires a little bit of post-processing, removing some kind of support bits and material or doing some sort of smoothing on the outside. Those are all done manually as well, which adds to kind of the cost and the lead time. You think that you order a part, they should print it and ship it the next day, but they have to wait for someone to come in and kind of clean it off. Those are additional modules that we're going to release. So it's going to be brick by brick. You can snap together an ecosystem like Legos. So that's kind of what we're building. Petra, you want to go into like who it's for?
Yeah, well, anyone who can use a 3D printer and needs 3D printing can use our printer. And that's what's both hard to explain, but also the power of 3D printing, from universities to on-demand manufacturing services to the Air Force to, car manufacturers. All of these industries, basically any industry, can use 3D printing. And the issue right now is that there's no 3D printer that's really scalable, automated, and that's easy for people to use and just kind of plug and play, and that's where we come in.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think that other 3D printers that have existed out there have not been, tackling that problem?
I think that, first of all, the industry isn't that old. Like, it came up in the 80s, but there's still a long way to go. So I think it's like in the makes and people are working on it, but a lot of people don't really necessarily build their printers from the customer's perspective. It's a little bit, so it's kind of like saying, why didn't Tesla come along sooner, right? They had electric cars on the market, but they just weren't very popular. And then Elon Musk came along, he made Tesla, and it's just something he did differently. Like, he really targeted the customer, he knew what they were looking for, and that's kind of what really made the difference for electric cars. So we're the 3D printer we're like Tesla, but for 3D printing.
Love that. So where are you guys at today? Does the printer exist? Do you have customers, or are you still in prototype phase?
Right behind us is one of them. You can see it, working in
Love
the background. We have testing partners. It's out there in the wild being used by, real people that are not us. It's being stress tested. So the testing partners that we selected were carefully chosen to be ones that, like, we want this thing running 24/7. You tell us when it breaks. And it really doesn't. It's exactly as reliable. Our customers are depending on it. They say, we depend on this machine that you gave us, which is great. Wow. And we're coming out in, within a year, on the open market, available for purchase for anyone. And right now we're kind of just in that pre-production phase.
That's great. And then when you guys look to eventually, launch the product for the mass market, who are the kind of competitors that are in this space that you guys are going to be, comp yourselves against that, in the market?
Yeah, the big dog in the industry is a company called Stratasys. It's one of the OGs, from the 80s, that started early on in the industry and has kind of stagnated a little bit and isn't finding traction with its customer base. And interestingly enough, they've gone on a little bit of an acquisition spree lately. So it's a good time to be, a startup in this industry because, the big dogs are snapping the smaller companies that are actually putting out real innovation and changing the game within the industry. So we're excited about that. It could be Stratasys, could be another company that's trying to compete with Stratasys. But that's the big dog. There's a few others in the industry landscape. But that's the big one that we always keep an eye on.
And then do you have a sense for how many 3D printers exist or how many they've sold so far, just to get a sense for how big the market is for 3D printers and the people that are actually purchasing them?
Yeah, so it's exact unit numbers are always hard to come by because a lot of companies are keeping that private, but there's economic data to support it. So the 3D printing industry in 2023 is an $18 billion industry. It's going to grow to $115 billion by 2030. So we're still kind of at the ahead of the hockey stick part of the growth scale. In 2020, there were 1.8 billion or over $1 billion of 3D printers sold in North America alone. It was, about 3 times that globally. And then the newer numbers aren't really available yet. Those reports only come out every few years. But it's a very big industry and it's growing. That's the most important thing. We plan to grow with it.
Love that. And then when you look at that industry, how much of the value is created within the actual manufacturing of 3D printed, whatever the actual output is, versus the services that are provided around it and like the intellectual property? Like, where do you see the value creation in the market?
It's everything swirled together. So in the 3D printing industry, there's the machines themselves, there's the materials that the machines use to print, there's the software that are used to interface with the machines, and then there's of course the services as well. So at R3, we can tap into basically all except for the services, right? The services are our customers, and that's a big part of the pie. I'd say about probably 2/3. So if 18 billion is in 2023, I'd say about 2/3 of that would be allocated to machines, materials, and software services, with the remainder being 3D printing services.
And then just like one last question on like the actual, what people are 3D printing today. I know that there's a lot of hobbyists that are doing it for fun, for art, for, little, trinkets and things like that. And then you have the more like, you mentioned the Air Force using it for on-demand manufacturing and prototyping. Where are you seeing kind of the consistent ongoing use cases for 3D printing in, the more, where there's a lot more beyond just the tinkerers? Where are you seeing any industries in particular or use cases that you guys have noticed?
Well, that's the amazing part about 3D printing. A lot of industries are ramping up production and using it frequently. So fashion industry has been ramping it up. They're using it a lot now. You can print like headphones, you can print brackets for airplanes, and almost every industry is using it very frequently. And I think the more they realize how useful it is, because you can print literally whatever shape you need. So instead of waiting to order something that's generic and then having to change it yourself, you can order parts that are exactly how you need them, and that the waste reduction is fantastic. So I think electronics, aerospace, automotive, all of those are really going to be using 3D printing more and more over the years. We've already seen that happening. So you can just Google something, ergonomic mice for your hands on laptops, or like the AirPods type things. Like those are already coming out, but they're very expensive still. And I think that's the issue, because it's still quite expensive and the labor is really intensive. It hasn't quite reached like mass adoption like it's going to once the price comes down. And so by reducing the labor costs, it's going to start becoming more and more ubiquitous.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen and read a lot about, people that are using 3D printing, from everything from trying to do 3D printed guns all the way through. I think it's a YouTube creator called like Unnecessary Inventions, when he's always doing something to do with 3D printing, like a ridiculous phone case that does things that you don't need it to. And you're like, it's fun to see the different expressions of it. And then also all the raw materials, people using like, plastic containers to then melt them down into whatever the film is called to load it in. So I love to see that there's also like a potentially an environmental impact too, where you can use recycled plastics, it looks like, for some of the raw materials as well. So it's been exciting to read about. So I guess, could we take a little bit of a turn now and talk a little bit more about like your company, right? You guys have embraced what appears to be multiple rounds of equity crowdfunding. Can you talk a little bit about, first of all, how you heard about crowdfunding and like how you initially like went out to seek investors to start the company and what that process was like?
So we actually found out about crowdfunding when we were at an accelerator in 2018. So right when R3 was founded. And this was at the way beginning of equity crowdfunding, because equity crowdfunding didn't become a thing until 2017, around then. So we weren't exactly sure how successful we would be with it, but it was intriguing because someone in our cohort was trying it. They were going through Republic, and so we looked into it and we were like, okay, well, this is new, it looks promising, let's give it a shot. So we tried it, and we loved that we were able to create our own page and really express our vision directly towards the investors. There was no, corporate boardroom and all that. We were directly able to interact with investors, and we just got a lot of traction. We feel like we have a really good rapport with our investors, and it really took off. So we haven't found a need to go through any other means of fundraising yet. And we've had a great experience. So yes, we've done a couple rounds now.
That's great. So you have only raised money from via equity crowdfunding, no angel any other investments. It's all been done via these portals that you've been tapping into. And you mentioned Republic. Was that the first one? And I noticed it looks like you're leveraging some of the others.
So Republic was our first one. StartEngine was what we did after Republic, and what we're on now. Our current round is on StartEngine. We have a great relationship with them as well. But we have raised through, so we got venture capital investment through the accelerator that we're in, and we've also gotten government grants. So one of those was through the Air Force. We've received other government grants as well, but that's kind of what kicked off the partnership that we have with the U.S. Air Force to kind of deliver, the 3D printing capabilities that they seek.
Yeah, and congrats. I mean, that's really exciting, and it's amazing to hear how you guys are leveraging all of the different portals that are, out there for your benefit. And I guess, could you talk about, the investors that you've brought in? Like, are they giving you feedback on the company? What's been a lot of the chatter amongst investors that have come in and watching your journey from essentially day one?
Yeah, well, we actually love our investors because they both give us feedback and also help us. Like one of our investors introduced us to a testing partner, and then a lot of them are either interested in 3D printing or using 3D printers. So they've given us feedback on what they want out of a 3D printer. So we take all of what they say and we really run with it and we integrate it into what we're doing. We've always had a very clear vision of where we're going, but having that extra feedback is always helpful. And we feel like being accessible to investors and future customers has been helpful in keeping us in line with what people want.
For sure. And based on what we've seen in the crowdfunding world, as long as your company and product is easy for people to understand, it's easy for them to want to invest in you versus it being some abstract new technology or biotech or whatever. It's it's automation, it's robots, it's real estate. We're seeing a lot of that really pick up. And I think obviously it's, you guys fit into that category. So it's been exciting to see. So I guess, when you look at your competitors and how big they are, they're on an acquisition spree, other companies that are maybe using more traditional ways of fundraising. Is equity crowdfunding something that you guys are just going to continue to leverage to raise money? I mean, is there a certain amount of money you need in order to kind of, get to a place where you feel like you're profitable and have enough cash flow to fuel operations? Or talk a little bit about kind of the journey you guys that think that you're on.
Yeah, so we always take the approach of being open to the best path forward. So we're not closed off to, traditional VC or anything like that. But right now our equity crowdfunding round is going great, and we're not sure whether we're going to raise again after this. So far, we're definitely going to have enough to get us to revenue generating, and we have had so much demand for our 3 printer that we're not sure if we'll need to continue, but it has been going really well, and so far, we are raising on StartEngine right now, so check us out.
So I guess talk a little bit about that. So where can people find you, both from a potential customer and an investor standpoint? Where can they find out more information?
Yeah, so our most comprehensive amount of information is on our StartEngine page. So it's startengine.com, R3 printing. You can Google it. There'll be everything we're doing and all of that. That's for investing. And there's also a lot of information on our company in general. You can write comments. We always respond to investor comments. Or you can also go to our website, r3printing.com, and there you can also submit comments or email us, and there's information on our company as well.
Is there anything else that you could share about your future plans and products? I know you mentioned that next year you're planning to have the first 3D printer out for purchase. Can you share a little bit about, any economics related to that, and what's planned for the future?
We can't share. We're keeping things under tight wraps in terms of our exact numbers, but we have a very strong pre-sales queue. It's in the millions of dollars. That's all we're going to say. And right now we're laser focused on getting our 3 printer out there and making just a truly excellent product launch. The customer service that our testing partners have received, that's the bar that we're setting for ourselves, and we want to be able to set that same bar for the hundreds or thousands of units that we're going to be sending out. After that, we have those additional modules that we are going to be releasing. Some of them are going to be released in 2023, so R3 is going to be on quite the tear. You can expect a lot from us in the next year, and we're very excited about that.
That's great. And how big is your team?
So it's tough to measure because we have so many people that are on our team, but not full-time on our team. So we have engineers, both in-house as well as outsourced. They work at design firms, or they're just, consultants that they work for us a certain amount of hours a week to help move things along in the areas of expertise that they have. For example, working with overseas manufacturers. That's something that, we have someone outside our team. We have patent attorneys, we have regular attorneys to drop the contracts for support and all those things, like all the bits and bobs and bolts that, make up a company. When you sell a product with a warranty and all those things, we don't necessarily have that all in-house, but we have it all at R3. So we have a really great team.
We're very proud. We partner with DLA Piper for all our patents. They're amazing. And it's like, how big are they, So it kind of expands.
Great. So it sounds like you guys are also pursuing a lot of patents. Can you talk a little bit about that? Is that specifically for the printer technology, or is it for other services?
Right now, we're focusing mostly on protecting the printer. We have the downstream modules that we'll be protecting as well. But yeah, it's the patents are a defensive mechanism, right? We're going to release our 3 printer out into the wild. We expect our competitors to buy one and try to, reverse engineer stuff. And in order to prevent them from just straight up copying all our hard work and innovation, there's going to be a patent to block that. But we're also not fully, I think that's one of the mistakes that a lot of our competitors make, that they release a machine and all that's protecting it is patents, and they lock in their customers with proprietary materials. They have to use their software, they have to use their materials, and customers don't want that. So what we're protecting, ourselves from being ripped off by competitors through the patents. We're also protecting ourselves from a business model perspective by building an ecosystem that customers don't have to use; they want to use it. Right? We're not going to lock you into proprietary materials ecosystem, but you're going to want to buy the materials from us anyways, because we do this, that, and the other thing. Let's say some sort of software integration that just makes your life easier. We charge you a couple extra bucks for it, and you're happy to do that because of the convenience it buys you. But if for some reason you want to use a different supplier, you're absolutely welcome to do that. So, we're taking a 2-pronged approach to being defensive about, all our hard work and innovation. And I think that's what's also special about R3. And I think that's what, both customers and investors feel. They look at that, they read that, and they're like, that's different. And like Petra said, like there's no one thing. It's like Tesla. Like, why is it different? Because it's the way you do it, and that's kind of what sets us apart.
It's not like I have to buy the HP printer ink for my particular model of printer. You can actually, use a lot of other, use other different types of raw materials, which is great. And I guess because that also ties into some stuff I've seen with like the marketplaces that exist for the models that you can then use to print, where you can go and like buy somebody's mouse design and all of that. So it's definitely a really interesting ecosystem to see appear, both from a hardware and also a software intellectual property design standpoint, quite emerged. So yeah, that's great. And then I guess just something else, just how big are your competitors? Like from a market cap size, do you have any sense for how large they are that you're going up against?
So it ranges. So Stratasys is, a multi-billion-dollar company, but some companies are valued at just like the single digit, 1 to 2 billion. And then there's a whole range of very small companies that, don't even kind of register on the market cap, data sheet. So the 3D printing industry has this really, really broad spectrum. I wouldn't say, obviously, like we compete with Stratasys when we're selling to these much larger clients, right? If we're trying to sell to Boeing, right, Stratasys machines are going to be right there in the room, that we're competing against. But it's not a one-to-one comparison because of the different approach that we're taking.
Yeah, I think the really cool thing, so there's like 2 ends of the spectrum. There's the hobbyist printers, and then there's the industrial printers, and we're neither. We want to offer more than the industrial printers because those are overpriced. Like Paul said, they lock you into all of their materials and their software, and it's just very constraining for what you're paying. And then the hobbyist printers, those are kind of tinkers. You have to do it yourself, and we kind of want to be more plug and play than that. So we actually feel like we're neither. We're kind of our own thing.
I love that. Yeah, that sounds great. Cool. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with the audience?
Check us out on StartEngine. We think you're going to like what you see. We have tons of traction. We're an early stage company, but we're not a new company, right? We're established. We have, patents, we have employees, we have printers. We're out there in the wild. We're launching soon. We have a strong pre-sales queue. If this is your cup of tea, if this type of investment is your cup of tea, we'd love to have you.
That's great. Paul and Petra, thank you very much for joining the Bullish Studio podcast, and we'll look forward to watching your journey through your crowdfunding, and hopefully see you out in market next year.
Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah, great to meet you.